Hello, my name is Zara. I'm an occupational therapist. I work for the Surrey Neuroplasticity Clinic. At our clinic, we largely deal with brain health, hence why there's a large brain behind me. Today, I'm going to talk to you about stress and sleep and how they intertwine and how to manage your stress so you can get better sleep and therefore have a healthier, happier brain. So, now that I've done the introduction, I'm just going to share my screen with you. Okay, so managing stress and improving sleep. So, this is a practical guide for healthcare workers. This has been a tough year for a lot of us, and I wanted to take this opportunity to thank you so much for doing the work that you do. It's not easy to be in healthcare right now, and so I hope that some of these strategies can help manage some stress that you may be having and also help you get some better sleep. Just a disclaimer, this is a quick overview of some strategies that can change your thoughts and help you to manage your mental health and your sleep. This is not a substitute for therapy. I'm not a licensed counselor. I'm an occupational therapist. So my focus is on function and how we can do practical things to get back to function. One of the things that occupies our time that's meaningful as humans is sleeping, and that's why it's sort of in my realm. But yeah, just keep in mind that I'm not a counselor. And also, I just want to mention if you are feeling so stressed and overwhelmed that you're feeling suicidal, please contact a helpline. So the helpline is listed there. It's very easy to find if you just type in suicide hotline in Google as well. I always just want to make that disclaimer for everyone. Alrighty. So I was approached by the CMHA to do a presentation on sleep. And I just realized there's this big connection between how stressed we are and how well we sleep. So I've kind of combined both of them so that we can talk about how stress and sleep interplay. If we're going to address our poor sleep, we've got to address the stress. So here we are. I also want to say that you're not alone. So in a study conducted by Stats Canada, 1 in 4 Canadians, so 1 in 4, reported worsened mental health since the beginning of COVID-19. That's a lot of us, right? And especially as a healthcare practitioner, you're bearing a lot of that stress. 1 in 3 Canadians reported issues with sleep. So this is a huge number, and in healthcare workers, it's going to be higher. So just know that you're not alone. There's a lot of people out there experiencing this, and there are really well-researched methods to help you get better sleep and to help you reduce your stress. So what we're going to cover today, we're going to cover something called sleep hygiene. We're also going to cover thinking techniques. So I'm going to go over a little bit of cognitive behavioral therapy and something called acceptance and commitment therapy. These are things that can help change the thoughts around stress and sleep. We're going to talk a little bit about meditation and how you can incorporate meditation and mindfulness into your daily life, and then also some just overall stress busting tips. So, sleep hygiene. So, a lot of these things are going to seem maybe commonplace or common sense, and that's okay. Just because something's common sense doesn't necessarily mean that we do it. And a lot of these things, even when I talk about them to clients every day, I kind of forget to do or have a hard time doing. So just bear in mind that yes, it is common sense, but it's also really important to do these things. So in order to get better sleep, one of the things that's really important is to have a ritual. So just like a child before bed, having a bedtime routine can help them sleep. Our brains don't change. Our brains change a lot since childhood, but in one way, they don't change very much. We still need that ritual before bed for sleep. It's like in operant conditioning where we train our brain to associate something with sleep. That's a lot of what sleep hygiene is about. We're associating things with sleep. So some examples of sleep rituals, some people might take a bath every night before they go to bed. Some people might have a diffuser that diffuses lavender oil, or they drink a warm glass of milk. Anything that's the same thing every night right before you go to bed, that's going to help your brain cue in to knowing, oh, hey, it's bedtime. Another thing, kind of along the similar lines, is having a routine. So trying to go to bed at the same time and wake up at the same time. And I know this can be hard if you're doing shift work. So that may not be one of the tips that's practical for you if you're a shift worker. But just keeping in mind that any semblance of a routine that you can keep is going to be good for your brain and good for your sleep. So this other point here, the bed is only for sleeping. The bed is only for sleeping and sex. So when we're in bed, we don't want our minds to be super stimulated and wandering into different places. So for example, if you're on your bed and you're on your phone or watching TV or reading a book, that's a stimulated activity that requires a lot of attention. And we want to start again with that operant conditioning. We want to start associating the bed with sleep. So if you're going to be on your computer or reading or doing puzzles or whatever it is, do it on the couch or do it somewhere else that's not even in your room, right? So just keep the bed for sleeping and sex. Avoiding screens 1 hour before bed. I think it's been in the media a lot lately, how blue light affects us. So the blue light from our screens convinces our brain that it's daytime because it starts to block the production of a hormone called melatonin, which we need for sleep. And so trying to avoid screens 1 hour before bed, it might be a nice idea as part of your nighttime routine to just read a book for an hour or do another quiet activity that doesn't involve a screen. And if you absolutely must have a screen right before bed, then putting a blue light blocker on either your computer with something like f.lux or on your phone. So limiting napping. Again, if you must nap, try to nap for only 30 minutes before 3 p.m. and in your bed. So we don't want to be napping on the couch or in a hammock. Not that it's the season for hammocks right now, but because, again, we want to start to associate the bed with sleep as much as possible. This next one might seem a little bit obvious, but having cool, dark, comfortable place to sleep. Sometimes it's hard to avoid the light that comes in from different sources, so you can wear an eye mask if you need. They have really nice eye masks out there, some of them that have lavender infused into them, or some of them that you can put in the freezer to make cold or put in the microwave to make hot. So there's some really nice eye masks out there. Make it as cozy as you can. So we spend a lot of our lives in our beds. So try to invest some money, some time, some effort into making your bed a really inviting place to be. Avoid sugar, caffeine, and alcohol, and big meals near bedtime. So we want our biggest meal, ideally, to be either at breakfast or lunch, and having a smaller meal at nighttime. And I know that's not really culturally what we do in North America, at least, but training your body to eat more like that can be more helpful because then it's not putting a bunch of energy into digesting while you're trying to sleep. Sugar, caffeine, alcohol, those might also seem kind of obvious. Some people, think, well, alcohol is a sedative, so, maybe a glass of wine before bed might help me sleep. But the thing is, alcohol is a sedative to a certain point. When it wears off, it starts to sort of reawaken your brain. And once that sedative effect wears off, your brain is kind of wired again and doesn't go through the proper stages of sleep. So you end up being more tired in the morning if you do consume alcohol right before bed. Obviously, it's sometimes during the week or on the weekends, it's unavoidable. So I wouldn't, be too hard on yourself, but just keeping these things in mind as tips and tricks. Regular exercise and exposure to sunlight during the day. So we're coming into some rainier months here on the Pacific Northwest, and it's harder to get sunlight. So one thing that I suggest to a lot of my clients is a sun lamp. So you can get the lamps, you can buy them at Costco, you can get them on Amazon. They emit the same kind of frequency of light or um, quality of light that the sunlight does, and that can help you to produce vitamin D. Vitamin D can be really good for your sleep-wake cycles. Um, Getting regular exercise during the day as well. And this doesn't have to be, I'm going to go to the gym for an hour. I'm going to, do that hour-long Pilates class. If you have 5-10 minutes, when you're at work, even run up the stairs, do jumping jacks, dance to a song that you like. We'll talk about this a little bit more later. Finally, don't set multiple alarms. So this is something that myself and a lot of people do. I know some people who set 10 alarms, and this is really bad for the brain, because basically what happens when we sleep is you go through cycles, right? You go through these stages of sleep, these cycles, and each one is a little deeper than the last, and then at the end you kind of start to come out of it. When you set an alarm, you're ripping yourself out of whatever stage of sleep that you're in. And then if you go back to sleep for 5, 10, 15 minutes, your brain starts to drift into that next stage of sleep, and then boom, you rip it out again, and then it drifts, and then you rip it out again, and it gets confused, and it has a hard time replicating those stages again. So when you go to sleep, next time you go try to sleep, then your brain is like, well, I don't know how to rest into this because I might just get ripped out again. So try your very best to set one alarm and wake up to that alarm. One way that you can do this is by putting your phone or your alarm way across the room, so you have to stand up to turn it off, or even outside of your room so that you really have to stand up to turn it off. In extreme cases, there are alarms that you can buy where you have to stand on them for a minute for them to turn off. That's another option. That would sure wake you up, I'm sure. But yeah, so just keep that in mind, that not setting multiple alarms. So these are the sleep hygiene tips. If you just search sleep hygiene into Google, you can find many a PDF and many sites that have all of these things listed on them. And yeah, just try to follow them as best you can, and that will help you get a better sleep. Okay, so I did say I was going to talk about stress as well. And one thing that comes up when we're really stressed is automatic thoughts. So a lot of us will have these thoughts that come up: I can't cope with this, I can't do this, I'm never going to get to sleep, this is too much. All these thoughts that start to come up, and then we kind of go in a bit of a spiral. So what I wanted to talk about is CBT. I, again, am not a licensed counselor or therapist. I do know a little bit about CBT, and a lot of what OTs do is in the behavioral activation part of CBT. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. What I want to talk about right now is just some quick ways that you can challenge your thoughts, because what we think affects how we feel, and that affects what we do. And that's the main basis of CBT. That's the little triangle that you're seeing on the screen here. And CBT has been studied to treat many different disorders. So it can really be beneficial for anxiety and depression and sleep. So there's a type of CBT called CBTI, CBT for insomnia, and it's beneficial for people who are having issues sleeping. So that's what we're going to chat about here. So let's say you're trying to get to sleep, and keep in mind that I'm going to give you examples around thoughts to do with sleep, but this can be related to any thought that's unhelpful for you. So if you have a thought come up and you're noticing that it's got a unhelpful quality to it, so it's something like, I can't cope, I can't do this, everything always happens that's bad to me, whatever it is, these thoughts that are normal for humans to have but are not very helpful for making us feel good, this same sort of challenging of the thought can apply to any of the thoughts that we have. So one of the thoughts when you're sleeping, that we're trying to sleep, that you might have is something like, I'm never going to get to sleep tonight, or I won't cope tomorrow, or I'll get sick if I don't sleep. Everyone else is asleep. I'm not asleep. There's something wrong with me. What you want to do is start to challenge these thoughts. So is this a thought? Am I just having a thought, or is this a fact? I want you to keep in mind, you don't have to believe everything you think. So is this a thought or a fact? What evidence do I have to support this thought? So, for example, I'm never going to sleep tonight. Is this a thought or a fact? Well, what evidence do I have for it? Most nights I do get to sleep eventually, right? It's not like never is a pretty strong word. You know, some nights it takes me longer than others. Da 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 da. You list out the evidence that you have to support the thought, the evidence that you have against the thought. Think about it. Am I jumping to conclusions? What's a more realistic alternative thought? Another way that you can look at this is, what would a really good friend say to me? Or what would I say to someone that I really care about if they said this to me? So if someone said, I will never get to sleep tonight, you know, let's say it's a partner said, I'm never going to get to sleep tonight. How would you comfort them? Would you just look at them and be like, yep, you're probably never going to sleep tonight. I agree. No, right? Or someone you really love said, I can't cope. I absolutely can't do this. I'm worthless. I'm da 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 da, whatever negative spiral is coming out. Would you just look at them and say, yeah, you're right? You probably wouldn't. I hope you wouldn't. But the funny thing is that we do it to ourselves all the time. So this compassion that we give to other people, we don't extend that same compassion to ourselves. So think about, what's a more realistic thought, or what is something that I might say to a friend or a loved one, someone I really care about, and then try to shift that thought. So try to tell yourself what you might say. You probably are not going to believe it at first. That's okay. Just the act of examining the fact that you are having this automatic thought and then trying to shift it a little bit, trying to massage that thought to change it. Just that act itself can be helpful for managing the stress and the emotions that come with that thought. So just something to think about. I also want to chat a little bit about some key points from a therapy called acceptance and commitment therapy. So sometimes when we go to challenge a thought, we do our very best. We're still really bothered by it. So sometimes your thought is like, well, I can't do my job. I'm worthless. I can't do it. And then you try to challenge it. You try to think, what would I say to somebody that I really love? Like, oh no, you can do this. You're really good for this reason and this reason and this reason, and you're definitely not worthless. And then you challenge it, and then you say, okay, well, I still feel this way, right? I still think this. I still have this thought. Then we have to move into something else. So we have to try something else. It's not always going to work to challenge it. We can move into something like an acceptance of it. This is a tricky word for a lot of my clients because no one wants to just accept suffering. That's not something that we really understand or want to do. But there's a really big difference between liking something and accepting it. So it's kind of like the serenity prayer, right? Grant me the ability to accept the things I can't change and change the things I can't accept. That's a nice little mantra that you can use for yourself. But the way that I like to describe acceptance so that it sort of makes sense is these pictures here. So imagine if you were in quicksand or a huge, awful, muddy swamp, and you're right in the middle of it. And this could be stress, this could be insomnia, this could be, anxiety, depression, whatever it is, whatever your swamp is. Just imagine, you might even not have to try very hard to imagine that you're in the middle of this horrible swamp. And if we're here in this swamp and we're saying, I hate this swamp, this is the worst thing ever, this stinks, this is awful, this is blah, 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 blah. We're saying all these things about the swamp. We're never going to get out of it, right? The only way out is through. And so if we can be in the middle of the swamp, and this is hard to do, I'm not saying that this is easy by any means, but if we can be in the middle of this swamp and we say, okay, I'm in a swamp. All right. So again, with maybe one of the examples, okay, so I'm not sleeping right now. All right. What's the next best thing that I can do? What's the next step that I can take that's going to get me outside of this swamp? And it might take a lot of steps. It might take a lot of effort. But what is one thing, one tiny, tiny thing I can focus on to put one foot in front of the other right now? And if there is nothing, then what can I do to just be with this right now? Because there's primary suffering. So primary suffering is being in the swamp. Primary suffering is being in our stress, being in our anxiety, being in the insomnia. Secondary suffering is the reaction to that. So secondary suffering is all the stuff that we tell ourselves about that. So how can we just sit with that primary suffering? Because it's inherent in living, right? We're all going to have it. How can we make room for it? Where is it in your body? So, if you close your eyes and you just feel into your body, where is that stress in your body? Where is that anxiety? Where is that sadness? Some people feel it in their stomach. Some people feel it in their chest. Some people are feeling pain in their shoulders or their back. Can you make room for it instead of fighting it? Because we're always fighting it, right? And that makes us absolutely exhausted. So instead of fighting this emotion that is so alive in our bodies, can we expand around it? Can we make room for it? Can we say, okay, I notice that you're here. That's okay that you're here. I'm gonna do what I can do right now that's within my control to manage this, to, take some steps towards feeling a little bit better, but this is okay right now that I feel this way. It's normal, it's fine, it's human. If we start to get into a shame spiral where we say, I'm not normal, something's wrong with me, or we start to get into a should spiral, as I like to call it, shoulding on yourself, I shouldn't feel this way. I'm something's wrong with me. This is da 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 da. That's secondary suffering, right? So just sitting with it, being with it. And I know this is a concept that is hard to understand. And it's also, when I first heard this, I was like, you got to be kidding me. Like, no, I'm not doing that. And I don't know how this is unbearable. I don't want to deal with that. So I just something to chew on, something to start to think about, because this has been studied in the literature to be highly effective for all sorts of things, for pain, for anxiety, for sleep. So something to think about. Another concept from acceptance and commitment therapy is something called diffusion. So you are not your thoughts. Like I said earlier, you don't have to believe everything you think. So another way that we can sort of, if we're having a really tricky thought, so we've tried the CBT, didn't work. We can't transform that thought. We tried the acceptance of it, not working. Hard time, can't accept it. So now you have this sticky thought, this thing that's living inside of you, that is this thought, or this emotion. If you can put words to your emotions, so you can give it a thought, speak to it, you can start to diffuse yourself from the thoughts. So often when we have these problematic thoughts, we kind of live fused with them. So it's almost like our hands are right in front of our face. Like if our hands are representing the thought, it's almost like they're right in front of our face, and we can't really see life. We can't participate in life. We can't engage with the people around us, because we're consumed by this anxiety, or we're consumed by this stress or these thoughts. Or when you're trying to sleep, you can't sleep because you're consumed, right? These things are just right in your face. And often what people try to do is get rid of the thought completely, right? Like, just, I don't want anything to do with this. I don't want anything to do with this emotion. But the thing is, we can't we can't get rid of our hands, right? So we're using this analogy. What we've got to do is just try to find a way to take them away from our face. So bring them down to our laps so that they're not blocking our view of reality anymore. So a way that you can do this with your thoughts and with your emotions is to give it a funny voice. So I'm going to list a couple different diffusion techniques. Some of them are going to sound weird, and I wouldn't expect you to resonate with all of them. So pick one that sounds like maybe something you could try and give it a go. But giving your thought a funny voice. So let's say the thought is, I'm not good enough. We'll just use that one as an example for these. So that's why William Shatner is there, because he has a bit of a funny voice. It could be Mickey Mouse. It could be, whoever, Jim Carrey in one of his movies. Give your thought that voice and say it in that voice. So say, I'm not good enough in that voice. It's a way, it sounds like maybe you're mocking yourself or something, but it's not like that. It's a way of disconnecting yourself from it so that you can kind of realize that you're not your thought, because we fuse with it. We think we are the thought. We think that thought is the absolute truth, and it doesn't have to be. So giving your thought a funny voice, separating from thoughts. So that's what this guy is doing down here. So he's, instead of just, you have this automatic thought, I'm not good enough. Then you say, I notice I'm having the thought that I'm not good enough. And it sounds like a small distinction, but really it's huge for the brain. With hard to deal with emotions, one of the really nice, easy keys to start to deal with them is objectivity. So finding a way to separate yourself from that, I notice I'm having the thought that I'm not good enough. You're recognizing, you're speaking to the fact that it's a thought, right? It's not necessarily the hard and fast truth. Another way, viewing it on a TV screen, maybe singing the thought, so to the tune of Row Your Boat or Happy Birthday or something, short and sweet. Then we can also just thank that story for trying to protect you. So there's a reason why we have thoughts that come again and again and again. There's a reason why we have the same kind of storyline going on. Some people have an I'm not good enough story that pops up over and over again. Some people have an I am not capable story, or, I am easily overwhelmed story, or whatever it is. There's something that's come up, and usually that's from past experiences that have kind of pigeonholed you basically into this sense of self. And what we can do is when that thought comes up, oh, that's the I'm not good enough story. Thanks for that, but I don't need that anymore, kind of thing. So in this way, when you're trying to sleep and these thoughts come up, a lot of the times the reason why we can't sleep is because our minds are just chitter-chattering away, doing all this stuff. So diffusing yourself from those thoughts, especially if they're negative, or I don't want to say negative because I don't want to put a qualifier on it, but especially if they're unhelpful thoughts. Okay, so another way of dealing with big emotions and lots of thoughts going through the brain is expressive writing. So let's say that you notice every night when you go to sleep, you're having a hard time sleeping because it's just incessant thoughts, just over and over again. What do I need to do tomorrow? What, this patient, and what about this? And oh my gosh, I forgot to do this, and this reporting, and all the things that come up, right? Writing it down. So I know that it sounds kind of silly, but this has actually been proven in study after study that expressive writing 20 minutes a day can really change the landscape of your brain. Again, this works with the similar principle of that objectivity. There's this really interesting thing that happens, sort of a disconnect between your limbic system in your brain, so your emotional system, and your frontal cortex, which is responsible for your logic and figuring things out. There's this interconnection that happens when you're really stressed and can't sleep. And when you write things down, they kind of separate themselves so that the frontal cortex can be more aware of what's going on um, and how things are happening in a logical way instead of an emotional way. So how do you do this? Set a timer for 20 minutes. Use a pen and paper to write all of your thoughts and feelings, so completely uncensored, unfiltered. Don't worry about grammar. Don't worry about spelling. Just write it out. You can even start with a sentence stem if you don't know what to write. You can say something like, I am stressed because, I am angry because, I'm having a hard time sleeping because, ... and then write it all out. And then the purpose of this at the end is that you rip it up. So you don't want to keep this because I don't want you to be ruminating about it, going back, looking at it. Rip it up, burn it if you have a safe place to do that. Put it where no one will find it. Another reason for this is because, it can be easy to have a lot of big feelings, and venting with friends can be important, and social connection is very, very important. But sometimes it can cause relational problems if it's continuous, right? If it's like every day we're venting, we're talking to friends. So this is a way of getting everything out without having to talk with another human, basically. And sometimes things can come up in your writing that you hadn't really realized before, and that can be a really potent thing for reducing stress. So hopefully everybody's with me so far. I know this is a lot of information coming at you pretty quickly. I usually spend a good amount of time on each of these things with my clients, so I just wanted to give you a quick overview of everything. Alrighty. So another thing that you can do if you're laying in bed at night and you are just completely overwhelmed with thoughts, and maybe you can't identify one thought that's just like that automatic thought, like what we were talking about earlier. Maybe it's just a stream of things. It's just an endless, stream of thoughts coming at you, and you don't know what to do with it. So another way is just to distract yourself from the thoughts. So when you're laying in bed, you could play a categories game. For example, list all the chocolate bars that you know, or list all the movies that you can think of that star a certain actor. Or you could go through the alphabet game. So the alphabet game is similar to categories, except you would choose a category and then go through the alphabet. So, famous people, go through A, B, C. Usually when I try this when I'm trying to go to sleep, I don't make it past J, and I'm fast asleep. Kind of like counting sheep, I guess, but this is a little bit more engaging and nice to do. You can focus on the breath. So inhaling, I am calm. Exhaling, I am peaceful. You can choose any mantra that you want. Mantra just means a phrase that you repeat. So, inhaling, I am happy. Exhaling, I feel, at ease, or whatever it is. Just choosing something and watching your breath and saying that phrase over and over. You can imagine a peaceful scene in your mind. So this is Provence in France, which is particularly peaceful for me to think about being in a lavender field in the middle of summer, just thinking about all of the senses that would be engaged. So, what does it smell like? What does the sun feel like on your skin? If you're laying on the ground, what does the earth feel like beneath you? You could be at a waterfall in your mind. You could be at a lake. This will work for people who have a particularly easy time visualizing things in their mind. That's not everybody. And sometimes there are guided visualizations that you can find on YouTube or on some of the apps that I'm going to mention in just a moment. Which brings us to meditation. So, a study conducted in 2015 showed that meditation significantly improves sleep quality for adults with sleep disorders. So, meditation is it has been quite, it's been blowing up, for lack of a better term, in the last 10 years. It is just been shown in so many studies to be good for so many things. And a lot of people are still really scared of it. I think a lot of people assume that in order to meditate, you have to sit completely still and have a blank mind. And I got to tell you, I've sat with monks who've been meditating for 40 years, as meditation practice and living in ashrams has been a big part of my life. And talking to those monks, their minds don't stop. The human mind doesn't ever stop. It's never blank. So just keep in mind that the goal of meditation is not to have a blank mind. The For example, like if you are lifting weights, the effort of lifting the weight and the thing that's building your muscle is pulling up that weight, right? Same thing with meditation. The effort, the thing that is building the muscle, the actual act of meditation is pulling your thoughts back to the focus of the meditation. So, for example, if you're focusing on your breath, the goal is not that you are completely blank of mind. The goal is that you, as your thoughts inevitably wander, you're able to notice that wandering and pull it back to the focus. Even if you have to do that 60 times in 15 minutes of meditation, that's like doing 60 reps of pulling that weight up. You are building that muscle, and that's a really good thing. And that helps us in our daily lives and in our sleep, in our trying to get to sleep, to be able to sort of reset the mind, to pull it back to that area of focus. So don't try and force sleep. If you're unable to sleep, see it as an opportunity for meditation. So I guess I should have said earlier that the bed could be for sleep, sex, and meditation, because again, it's a restful activity and that's fine. So let's say, you're laying in bed for hours and you can't sleep. Try to just throw on a meditation, see how that feels. We'll talk a bit about the different kinds of meditation that you can do, but just know that that's a way for your brain to get more rest. So instead of, even if your mind is wandering during the meditation, the fact that you're trying to do this meditation is going to be more restful for your mind than just laying there and, thinking about how you're not going to cope tomorrow because of sleep. So it's a good idea to throw that on in bed when you can't sleep. You can put on headphones if you have a partner. So ways to practice mindfulness and meditation. So it's good to practice it all day, really. Mindfulness is going to be really helpful for stress, because when we're stressed, we're thinking about the future. When we're depressed, we're thinking about the past. When we are calm and in a good state, we are in the present moment. So ways to get yourself pulled into the present moment, being mindful of your 5 senses. So even just right now, take a moment, think about, what am I noticing in my body? Can I feel the support of the chair beneath me? Can I feel my feet on the ground? Can I feel the temperature of the air? What am I smelling? What am I seeing? What am I hearing? And just being curious, just kind of cueing into, what are these things around me that are that I can sense in this moment, because that pulls you into the moment. Same thing if you're washing dishes, even if you're with a particularly difficult client or patient, how do your feet feel on the floor? Can you take a deep breath and just notice for half a second? Can you notice how your body feels in the chair, how your posture is when you're with this client? What's going on in your body? Being aware of our bodies and opening to the sensations in our bodies is going to be a really, really helpful thing as you move forward. So being mindful of the breath or body. So progressive muscle relaxation is one thing that's really nice to do before bed. You can find those on YouTube or Insight Timer. So Insight Timer is an app that I really love a lot. it shows you around the world all the people that you meditated with after you've done meditating. It also gives you stars if you meditate more. So there's like an incentive built into this app, which is great. Um, and Calm is another good one. There's a whole bunch of apps out there. So just find the one that works for you. There's one that I particularly like for sleep. It's called Hypnobox. It's more of a hypnosis-based meditation, and it tends to work really well for my clients for falling asleep, and for me as well. Um, so yeah, you can also try some breathing exercises. You can find those on YouTube as well, or any of the aforementioned apps. Okay, so we're nearing the end. Just a couple more things I want to chat with you about. Stress reduction at home. So we're in a tough year, and it's really important to take a break from social media and news. It can be overwhelming, but it's important to stay in the loop, right? So if you're a person who avidly watches the news or checks it every day, maybe just setting a limit for yourself, just a certain amount of minutes every day that works for you, or a certain amount of minutes once a week, or whatever you feel is good for you to stay in the loop and updated, but isn't overwhelming, because that's going to play into our stress and our fight and flight response, and the fear that's going on right now. So just taking a break from that every once in a while, connecting with friends and family. So it's really important to have social connection. It really helps us to engage I just said the fight or flight response in the previous one, so I'll talk about the rest and digest in this one. Connecting and smiling and joking, things like that are going to be huge for engaging what we call the parasympathetic nervous system, your rest and digest. So think about that, and how can you connect? I know it's not always easy, but can you connect from a safe distance outside in nature, or can you, have a video call with a friend? Watching funny movies and comedies. So pick your favorite comedian and just spend 10 minutes watching a funny thing on your break at work or something. That can reset you. There's this thing called the facial feedback hypothesis, where if you smile, even if you're just faking a smile, it's going to feed back to your body that you are happy, and that can start to produce some things like serotonin and dopamine, which are like happy and reward chemicals. So think about things you can do that will make you laugh. And even if you don't particularly feel like laughing, maybe even just faking a little laugh every once in a while. Engaging in your favorite activities. So, gosh, yeah, I know so many healthcare workers right now who are so stressed to the brim that they have not been engaging in their favorite activities. And throughout the last 8 months, I've been in that same boat where, I've come home after work and I don't have the energy to do the things that I love. But I find that the days where and there are days where you need to respect that and take that rest. But there are some days where there's a little bit of spark in you to do something. And if there's, a hobby, maybe you used to paint a lot or play guitar, or maybe you like dancing, or any number of things. There are some things we can't do right now because of the restrictions and some things being closed down, but just try to find something that you really liked before and see if you can re-engage in it. And it might not feel as rewarding at first, but see if you can re-engage. Reward yourself. So we do so much for others as healthcare providers, and we push through and we get everything done, and we get everything done for everyone else, and we forget to reward ourselves. So I really, really always encourage this with my clients, especially because they're just going through rehab and they're doing all their exercises, and then what? Nothing, right? So reward yourself. So say, if I manage to, go for a 30-minute walk 3 times this week, on Sunday, I'm going to get myself my favorite takeout. or I'm gonna, dedicate 30 minutes before I go to sleep tonight just to giving myself a massage or taking a really nice bath because I did a great job today. I'm going to buy my favorite magazine. I'm going to watch my favorite movie, whatever it is. Just think about ways to reward yourself, things that you can look forward to. Because, with anxiety, we're thinking negative things about the future. What if, what if, what if? If you have something in the future that you can look forward to, that can be really protective and helpful for your resilience. Connecting with nature. So, definitely taking the time, and nature doesn't have to be a huge park or a mountain or, a big river. Just go outside and touch the grass. Just hang out. I know it sounds kind of silly, but just hang out by a tree. Like spend 5 minutes just on your way home from work or even from work to your car looking at, and you see me looking up because I'm looking at all the things outside of my window right now, which are quite beautiful. It's fall and the leaves are changing colors. So spending that time just noticing, wow, the moss on that tree is really beautiful, or like, that's a really nice flower. We're wired to be connected with nature. So see if you can find ways to do that. Cold showers. So this is something I do. It's a way of increasing serotonin and endorphins. So a lot of methods for doing it, basically you hop in the shower nice and warm. At the end of the shower, you turn it down cold, deep, lots of deep breaths. That's how I start my morning every morning, and it really helps to increase your serotonin and your endorphins. So those are, again, feel good neurochemicals. Have a ritual after work to leave work at work. So some people have a thing that they say at the end of the day, like work complete or something. I mean, that sounds a little bit robotic, but something that says, similar to what we were talking about earlier with that ritual before bed. This is saying, okay, I'm done. Like I'm not thinking about this until I walk in there the next day or until I open my computer up tomorrow morning, because maybe some of us are working from home. So closing that down with something. Some people take a hot shower or a cold shower after work as a way to sort of wash off their day. Or maybe there's a certain song that you listen to every day, and that's your, okay, this is done song. Whatever it is, have yourself a ritual to leave work at work. For stress reduction at work, so talking with a coworker or join a support group, talk to people. I get in this state sometimes where I'm like, I must be the only one who's overwhelmed by this. Like, clearly it's just a fault of my own that I can't do this or can't handle this certain thing that was said by a client or something along those lines. And then once I speak it out loud, I get usually at least 5 people saying, oh yeah, that I've had that before and that must be hard and I totally understand. So try not to be too silent with what you're thinking and feeling, because there's probably a lot of people out there who feel the same thing. And if you're feeling really overwhelmed, joining a support group, there's many out there, especially now, that are accessible and online, easy to join. So think about that as well. Taking mini breaks to do a breathing exercise. So it takes a few seconds. So we can even try it right now. So we'll breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 2 seconds, breathe out for 6. So just try that right now. So that took under 15 seconds, I think, if my sense of time is correct. And it's a really quick way to engage your parasympathetic nervous system, to engage that stress reducing system. And you only need maybe 3 of those breaths. When we think about, oh, I needed to take a break, we think about like, I need a 15-minute break, or I need to escape this place, or whatever it is. It doesn't have to be like that. It can just be even just right before you open up a computer or to do some charting, take a nice breath and ground yourself first. Keeping pictures to remind yourself of the things you love. So pictures of your dogs, your family, your friends, whatever it is, mountains, um, maybe it's your favorite, I don't know, whatever you want, your favorite meme, like just around your office or around your home office or whatever you're doing, having pictures to remind yourself of the things that you love. Listing 5 gratitudes. Gratitude is huge, 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 huge for how we feel, for our mental health, for our well-being, for reducing stress. Um, thinking about 5 things you're grateful for when you're, even if you sit down to go to the bathroom, on your way to the bathroom, think about a few things you're grateful for. Just kind of building in the rituals of thinking about what you're grateful for can be really, really beneficial. Acknowledge your hard work. That's why I started this program with an acknowledgement, because it is hard right there. It is hard out right now for everyone in the whole world, and for healthcare workers especially. So acknowledge the fact that you are doing amazing work and that it's hard work. And give yourself credit for that, because we far too often don't give ourselves credit. Creating a supportive mantra. So mantra is a word I've mentioned a couple times throughout this presentation, but it just means a phrase that you can say. So something like, regardless of the outcome, my best is always good enough, or I am capable. And say it like you mean it, right? So even if you're faking it, even if it's a totally, completely fake sentence, say it like you mean it. I am capable. Or regardless of the outcome, my best is always good enough. Say it like you mean it. And choose something that really works for you. It might even be something a little funnier than that, like just whatever works. Okay, 2 more things, and then I will be saying goodbye. Motion changes emotion. So kind of bringing it all together and going back to the beginning when we were talking about CBT. So cognitive behavioral therapy. So this is the behavioral part of CBT. And it's also just grounded in science beyond CBT. It's just a good thing to do. So taking regular breaks from sitting or laying down. So if you do a lot of sitting in your job, trying to set a timer for 30 minutes. And I know it's like, well, I can't get up. I'm in the middle of this thing. Again, it's a lot of all or nothing thinking for a lot of people, but it's really no time at all, and it's going to save you time at the end of the day if you take small breaks. So standing up, even just doing a little stretch and then sitting back down, getting back into it, or stepping outside briefly for fresh air, getting a glass of water, want to stay hydrated, just taking a second to stand up and smile really big, even if you don't feel like smiling. Again, because of that facial feedback hypothesis, the ability for your brain to believe what's happening on your face. Try a dance class, yoga class, or any other movement that you're interested in. There's so many things available online right now for free. For free. Even just throwing on your favorite song and just kind of like moving your body around, see how your body wants to move to that song. Skipping, getting a skipping rope. I don't know how it works from where you're working, but maybe having it in the break room or at home. Skipping for 1 minute can give you a whole nice dose of endorphins. Hula hooping, also good for that. I'm a little biased because I love hula hooping. Doing jumping jacks for a minute, or going for a mindful walk. So just going for a walk, noticing the sensations in your body, noticing the things around you, all of that. And finally, don't forget self-compassion. So I just listed so many different things that you can do, and a lot of people will try to do them perfectly. They'll try to be like, oh, I gotta do this, this, and this, and I gotta set time for this and a schedule for that. And we forget to be compassionate with ourselves. We forget to not judge ourselves. So when these things come up and maybe all of these coping mechanisms fail, just do your best to be present with the fact that you still have that emotion. It's still alive in you. Remember the mindfulness. Try not to judge yourself. Acknowledge the common humanity of what you're going through. It is normal. It is so normal to be having a hard time right now. And being human means being imperfect. It means having big, messy emotions, and that's okay. It is completely human and completely normal to be stressed, to not be able to sleep right now. Again, as I mentioned earlier, talk to yourself as you might talk to a best friend or a small child. Give yourself encouragement and love, even if you don't believe it. So do your very best to be kind with yourself and to be compassionate with where you're at. Acknowledging that it's normal, acknowledging that you're doing your best. All right, so that's my presentation. I work for the Surrey Neuroplasticity Clinic. You're an individual, so you got to find out what works for you. Like I said earlier, in the clinic, we go in depth into all sorts of different exercises and cater them to what works for you. We deal with neural health and how to heal the brain from chronic pain, from anxiety, from like car accidents, from all kinds of things, Parkinson's, stroke. So we, experts in brain health, and we're here to help if you need it. Our phone number is there. And if you have any questions, my email, I'll just give you my email, is zaradureno@snpc.tech. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. And usually I have a questions section for when this is a live session, but since this is a recorded session, please just email me if you do have any questions. I have my list of references here, and I'm just going to stop sharing. And thank you so much for being a part of this today. I hope that you learned something and could take a little tidbit of something away. I hope that you can reduce your stress and get better sleep.